Hello and welcome to Host Planet Bitesize, the podcast brought to you by Host Planet and Hostfully. My name's James Varley, the founder of Host Planet, and our goal is to share everything you need to know about buying and managing short-term rentals. Today's guest is Nick Massey from Proper Insurance, and he'll be sharing 5 myths about STR coverage that every host needs to hear. Okay, real talk now for all you hosts out there. You know that moment when your guest messages you again with, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi code?" Or you're staring at 5 different calendars, wondering if you've accidentally double booked the cottage. Yes, we've all been there. That's why here at Host Planet, we recommend Hostfully. It's basically your rentals control center. It handles bookings across all the big platforms, syncs your calendars to ensure there are no double bookings, automates guest messages, and even creates these really slick digital guidebooks that stop all the repeat questions. Honestly, it just makes your life easier and keeps your guests happier, helping you achieve those all-important 5-star reviews. And here is a little bonus. If you're a Host Planet listener, you can get $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Just hit the link in the show notes and use the codes PLANET500 for the PMS and Host Planet GB for the guidebooks. And if you'd like a proper walkthrough, there's also a link to book a demo with Frank Bosey from Hostfully. He will show you how it all works. Less stress, more bookings, sorted with Hostfully. Nick, thank you for joining us on Host Planet Bitesize. You've got 5 facts that every host needs to know about short-term rental insurance. So take it away with fact number 1.
Thanks, James. For everyone, just real quick, my name's Nick Massey. I'm with Proper Insurance. I'm our chief sales officer. Spend a lot of my time traveling around, doing podcasts, doing things like this to help people understand a bit more about risk management. Full disclosure, my expertise is in the insurance markets in the United States, just for everybody listening. So I think it's not so much facts. I think it's more myths, James, that we run into. And, myth number 1 is going to be that my regular run-of-the-mill standard homeowners insurance or condo insurance or whatever is out there in the general market is going to be substantial enough to cover the exposure that we face as hosts with vacation renting. And the fact of that is that it is untrue. Insurance is written very specifically for the exposure at hand, and it's underwritten that way by the carrier and priced according to the risk that they're taking on. So your regular homeowner's insurance are really just meant for it to be your primary home. They have very, very restrictive business activity exclusions. There's a lot of limitations in those products for the different types of things that we do and offer at our vacation rental properties, whether they double as our primary home or they're an investment property. And so we need to be sure that we're attacking this risk management equation, starting with the fundamental knowledge that your standard run-of-the-mill insurances are not going to be satisfactory for cover from a property damage and a liability perspective in this market.
Absolutely the same here in the UK as well. Yeah, a bog standard insurance policy is not going to be enough. Even if you are maybe just renting a room in your own property, a normal home insurance is not going to be relevant. You need to get specific cover for holiday letting, as we call it here, or short-term rentals or serviced accommodation, whatever the term is, you're going to need a specific policy. Okay then, Nick, myth number 2.
Myth number 2 is going to be the quote unquote free insurance provided by the OTA, the online travel agent, your Airbnbs, your VRBOs, your booking.coms, your on and on and on down the line. They all have or provide some level of protection to the host. That's in place really to protect them. It's more of a good branding protection. I'm not saying that they don't pay, that they don't cover. They do, but think of it more as a promise. And unfortunately, promises can be broken. So it's going back to number 1. It's really important that you're making sure you have the right insurance.
Yeah, I think it's very much a nice to have. Like air cover's probably the most famous out of all these OTA insurance policies, and we use the insurance policy term quite loosely. I've used air cover myself as a host. Sometimes when a guest has damaged something or broken it, if you send the photos, and to be fair, most of the time Airbnb have been very quick to pay whatever the damage is. If you say the cost of this is £50 or $100 or wherever you are. Generally, that will go straight away if you've got proof that the damage is caused by the guest and the guest has accepted that they've caused the damage. But yes, it is not a substitute for a proper insurance policy. That is for sure. Myth number 3, then, Nick.
Myth number 3 is going to be related to those out there who are using a professional property manager to assist with their bookings and guest communications and all of that. And it comes to something we get quite often, which is, well, my property manager has insurance, so why do I need insurance? And the truth of the fact is that your property manager's insurance doesn't extend to cover you. So think of it like you were a general contractor building homes. You might hire subcontractors to come in and do the plumbing, the electrical work, et cetera, and they need to have their own insurance or will have their own insurance to protect them and their work product. So it's the same here. As a short-term rental host or a mid-term rental host, you are the general contractor, and any other contractors that you bring into your business need to have their own insurance. Now, on top of that, it's very common, at least in the United States, for property managers to require you list them as additional insured. And so if you go to your current insurance product and say, I need to add XYZ LLC as additional insured, they're a property manager, and they tell you they can't list commercial entities as additional insureds, then that should be kind of red flag number 1, that it's time to really go out and shop and make sure you have the right product, because that should be the telltale sign that you probably have the wrong product in place right now.
Yeah, I think the common theme here is that don't think that insurance is somebody else's responsibility. It's not the responsibility of Airbnb. It's not going to be the responsibility of your property management company. You've got to take responsibility for your own property. Okay, then, Nick, myth number 4.
Myth number 4 is going to be that umbrella insurance, it covers everything. It's another thing that we get quite often and comes into the misnomer of current insurance marketing and consumer psychology around the use of umbrella. Now, I'm not saying umbrellas aren't needed. You should, if available, buy umbrellas. As a risk manager, I tell everybody, buy as much insurance as you can afford, especially liability insurance. Your liability insurance should be at a minimum more than enough to cover the worth of the asset at which this business is being conducted. But umbrellas don't work in the business world as they do in the personal world. So in the personal world, you could have multiple cars and multiple long-term rentals and multiple homes and multiple kids and on and on and on and on. And you get this umbrella and it goes over the top. And that umbrella is an extension of liability coverage to what all of them provide. So a standard limit of liability in the U.S. for home insurance on your primary residence is $300,000. On a car, it typically maxes out at $250,000. That's not enough if somebody is seriously injured. So you get an umbrella, and that gets you up to $1 million or more dollars in that protection. The problem is those still carry personal side. They still carry this business activity exclusion. So if you're operating a quote unquote short-term rental business and making more money than defined in that contract about what is defined as a business, typically $2,500 or more in earnings, then it's simply not going to respond. The other part of umbrellas that everybody needs to understand is they're what's called follow form coverage. So in the amenities arm race that we have in the vacation rental world of people trying to add and add and add all of these attractions to bring hosts, you need to understand that if that amenity, let's say a canoe or a kayak or some type of paddle boat for a waterfront property, is excluded in the base form of your coverage, the umbrella doesn't come in and cover over the top of it. And so it's really important when you're thinking about risk management that you very much separate your personal assets that you have and then these money generating assets into a different bucket and make sure that you're insuring those correctly. You can still get umbrellas over vacation rentals. You just got to make sure it's the right umbrella that follows the right form underneath what the base product is. So if you got personal liability over here and you have, say, commercial or business liability here, the personal stuff doesn't extend over the commercial stuff. Again, going back to my general contractor example, if I have a contracting business, my home insurance through an Allstate or a State Farm and that umbrella doesn't extend over the top of my work vehicle, all my employees, and the general work and labor that I do on a day-to-day business, a day-to-day in that business, excuse me, that. So I got to have my own stuff in this bucket and I have my own stuff in that bucket. And I think that's really important for people to understand.
Yeah, very important. Yeah, and you got to get specific. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, then, Nick. So, fifth and final myth.
The last one is really important, and it comes to a question we get quite often, which is, I cannot be held liable for the negligence of my guest. And the simple truth of the matter is, you can be. And you will be. So it goes far beyond the slip and fall accident. The number one claim that we see at vacation rentals is a slip and fall. And it typically happens within the first 24 hours of the guest arriving at a property. And at least that's the data we have in our book of business for the US-based properties. So what happens here is, anytime there's a lawsuit, it comes down to who is negligent or who is responsible. And unfortunately, what we see on and on and on again in these cases is, well, if the argument is, well, if you didn't have a public listing for this person to come and stay at your property, this incident would not have occurred. And so that's where they can try and get you in a personal injury, lawyer type situation in the U.S. Other markets around the world may not be as litigious. The U.S. is very litigious, yes. And going to shows and doing these types of interactions, we start hearing that other parts around the world are starting to get more and more litigious as well. So there's two very important things to make sure you have. And we already stated one of them was, make sure you have the right insurance for what you're doing. That way a liability type claim in a lawsuit is being responded to. And then number two to this is making sure that you have very robust coverage. And that coverage is extending not just to cover you on the property line, but also when those guests vacate your property. When they go out and about in the world that you're introducing them to in your micro community or in the grander scope of things. I mean, we have the World Cup coming to the US. These folks are going to be traveling all over the place. They're not just going to be staying in your little community. They could rent your house for weeks and weeks at a time and use that as their base camp hub to go out and about and do other things. So make sure you're covered off the property line as well. And also make sure you're covered for your amenities. You need to have a list of the amenities that you're providing outside of kitchen utensils and coffee makers. Things like, I have a pool, I have a hot tub, I'm pet friendly, I'm waterfront, and I have canoes and kayaks, I have a dock, I have a sauna, I have workout equipment. I advertise that there's this wonderful park down the street for our guests to take their children to. You need to make sure that you're covered for all of that in the unseen circumstance of something coming up and that letter shows up in the mail. You can pick up the phone and call your insurance provider and know with confidence that you have protection against that legal case. This type of insurance does cost more, but when you look at the difference in cost versus the standard markets to what defending yourself and paying for your own lawyer may end up cost, which is hundreds of dollars an hour if you've never paid one before, the difference in premium, it takes one case and you make that up and then some over a very short amount of time with making sure that you have the right protection in place.
100%, yeah. And 5 brilliant myth busts there. And I think they're relevant just about wherever you are in the world, obviously specific to the US market, but I think a lot of these are very relevant, whether you're in the UK or anywhere else. I'm wondering, Nick, is there a case that you share with people when you're on your travels, if you want to, frighten them really into, making sure that they've got the right insurance?
There's two that, one is very close to me because it's one of my personal clients from a long time ago. He's gone and sold this property now, but he had an Airbnb booking, and they showed up on a Thursday, and the neighbor let him know that they were throwing a party. Little 2-bedroom cabin, nothing crazy. And he ended up getting in contact with Airbnb. They canceled the booking. They kicked them out. The next day, Friday night, there is now way more people at his property. There's fire in the backyard, which turned out to be a number of furniture pieces that they decided to burn. Virtually every window in his home is broken. They found buckets of paint in the shed and threw these buckets of paint all over the house, cabinets ripped off the wall. They ended up causing about $102,000 in damage. And that doesn't include the lost revenue behind the restoration period. So because the booking was canceled, Air Cover doesn't respond because there is no active booking in relation to this. So that was one case in where it's very important to make sure you have damage caused by a guest maliciously and intentionally on your coverage. That is something that we cover. So we ended up paying that in full, plus his lost business revenue. He was shut down for about 4 months for home repairs. And then on the liability side, it has to do with a lot of liability things are highly preventable. But what you need to realize is that a lot of our markets are drive to. And so folks could be driving to your property, and that means they're going to get there later at night and it's going to be dark. In this particular case, this home, beautiful spread, large property on a lake, and gentleman who was hurt, he was in the back seat of the car. He had been drinking on the drive down there. They get to the property as it's dark out, and he goes for a walk in the backyard to check out the property. And just off the side of the pool is a gravel pathway, and he starts walking that gravel pathway, and it terminates at a cliff, about a 30-foot fall down rocks into a lake. Ultimately, he was life flighted out of there. He spent about 8 or 9 weeks in the ICU, racked up about $780,000 bill there, amongst other damages, some permanent injuries, on and on and on. It was turned into a very large settlement. We responded to that to our full policy limits. Air Cover actually responded to that as well due to the size of the claim, to their full limit on the guarantee as well. And that's one where it's really kind of opens up the door of like, you need to go check out your property in multiple scenarios, which is walk your property during the day, walk your property at night. If you have an exposure like that, where there is a fall hazard, it's time to invest in a fence and put that up, because you don't want that happening to you. You don't know who these folks are. You don't know what they're doing on their way to your property. Are they showing up intoxicated? Are they getting intoxicated while they're at your home? And this is why these things happen within the first 24 hours most commonly, because they simply don't know their way around the property yet. And so that's when an injury is going to happen. Most likely. So those are the two ones when I'm sitting at a conference or speaking on stage. I tend to bring those two up. They are very extreme examples, yes. But those are examples of, if you don't have the right coverage, the standard home insurance policies are going to deny that particular claim on both accounts. And that can cause some serious financial turmoil for the vast majority of us in this marketplace.
Yeah, don't be liable for that $780,000 ICU bill. Get the right insurance, people. And speaking of the right insurance, Nick, tell us about Proper Insurance and where people can find out more.
So Proper Insurance, we specialize solely in insuring vacation rental, short-term rental, midterm rental, rental arbitrage, anything to do in the short-term or vacation rental marketplace, namely in the United States right now. Hopeful future expansion to other markets can come. You can find us at www.proper.insure. There's no .com. You can call us at 888-631-6680. Our team is here to help and walk through what current policy that you have, what these differences are, get you a proposal on what our coverage not only would look like for you, but also kind of the premium, so you can take an in-depth comparison to what you're doing now versus what this upgrade would look like for you. It's 100% free for our consultations, and any follow-ups that you want, any questions that you have. And then if this is an upgrade for you, we can work very quickly with our position within the market with Lloyd's of London and our other partner Concert Specialty. We can turn coverage around as soon as same day if this is of utmost urgency for you. So we look forward to you guys reaching out and at the very least, walk away from a conversation with a much more firmer understanding of risk management and how these insurance products work.
Fantastic. And we'll put all those details in the show notes. Nick, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for joining us on Host Planet Bitesize.
Thanks for having me, James.
All right, that's it for today's episode. My thanks to Nick for joining us on today's show and sharing those 5 insurance myths. Remember, this podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Hostfully, which is trusted by short-term rental professionals across the globe. As a Host Planet listener, you get 2 exclusive offers: $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software. Just use the code PLANET500 and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Use the code HostPlanetGB. To grab these deals, click the link in the show notes or head to hostfully.com. For more free education, tips and trends from the STR industry, visit houseplanet.club, where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcasts, and download a suite of ebooks for hosts and property managers. That's it for today's episode. Until next time, happy hosting.